On my birthday, my parents gave my gift to my sister and said, "Oh, sorry. We didn't know someone so boring came to this world today. Well, you don't deserve anything, so stop looking." My sister smirked. Finally, someone's being honest about who actually matters in this family. Dad added, "Some birthdays just aren't worth celebrating or remembering." I stayed silent. That night, I packed my bags without a word. Weeks later, as they sang happy birthday to her again, their phones lit up with 74 missed calls and a message they never expected. "My name is Sarah, and this is the day my family showed me exactly where I stood in their priorities and how I decided to change that dynamic forever." Growing up as a middle child in the Martinez household meant living in perpetual shadows. My older sister Emma was the golden child, straight A's, head cheerleader, homecoming queen, the works. My younger brother Jake got all the attention for being the baby, the surprise blessing his mom liked to call him. He was 8 years old now, and then there was me, stuck in the middle, apparently too boring to warrant much notice. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't exactly wallflower material. I maintained a solid B+ average, played violin in the school orchestra, and worked part-time at the local bookstore. I thought I was doing pretty well for myself, but in my family's eyes, pretty well apparently wasn't worth celebrating. The pattern had been going on for years, but I guess I'd gotten used to it. Emma's achievements were met with elaborate dinner celebrations and social media posts. Jake's Little League games had the whole family in attendance with matching t-shirts. My orchestra performances? "Oh, we'll try to make the next one, honey." My good grades? "That's nice, dear." My promotion to assistant manager at the bookstore? Complete radio silence. But I told myself it didn't matter. I was independent, responsible, and building toward my future. I had been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, and I was planning to major in business administration. I figured once I graduated and started my career, they'd finally see me as someone worth their attention. Then came my 18th birthday. I woke up that morning with genuine excitement for the first time in months. 18 felt significant, like a real milestone. I was officially an adult, and maybe, just maybe, my family would recognize that with something special. I dropped hints about wanting a new laptop for college since my current one was held together with duct tape and hope. When I came downstairs for breakfast, the house felt different. There was an energy in the air. Decorations that hadn't been there the night before. My heart actually fluttered with hope. Maybe they hadn't forgotten after all. "Morning, birthday girl," Mom called from the kitchen, and I practically bounced with excitement. "Good morning. Everything looks amazing," I said, taking in the balloons and streamers. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone with a self-satisfied smirk. "Oh, these aren't for you," she said without looking up. "My acceptance letter to Princeton came yesterday. This is my celebration party." I felt my stomach drop, but I tried to recover quickly. "That's great, Emma. Congratulations. But it's also my birthday, so maybe we could celebrate both." Dad walked in carrying a beautifully wrapped box, exactly the size and shape I'd been hoping for. A laptop box. My heart started beating faster despite the Princeton news. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," he said. And for a moment, I thought maybe everything would be okay after all, but then he walked past me and handed the box directly to Emma. "What's this?" I asked, confused. Mom looked at me with this expression I'll never forget, like I was a stranger who had wandered into their house uninvited. "Oh, sorry, we didn't know someone so boring came into this world today. Well, you don't deserve anything, so stop looking." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, mouth open, waiting for the punchline or the just kidding that never came. Emma's smirk widened as she accepted the gift that was supposed to be mine. Finally, someone's being honest about who actually matters in this family. I looked at Dad, hoping he'd say something, anything to soften the blow. Instead, he just shrugged and added his own knife to my back. Some birthdays just aren't worth celebrating or remembering. The room went silent, except for the sound of Emma tearing open the wrapping paper. My wrapping paper on my gift on my birthday. I stayed silent. What was there to say? The message was crystal clear. I watched Emma pull out the sleek, new MacBook Pro I'd been dreaming about, the one that would have made my college experience so much easier. She already had a perfectly good laptop, but apparently she deserved two, while I deserved none. "Thanks, Mom and Dad," Emma gushed, not even attempting to hide her satisfaction. "This will be perfect for Princeton. I mean, I know my old laptop works fine, but it's always good to have a backup." Jake wandered in, saw Emma with her new prize, and immediately started asking when his next gift would be coming. Because, of course, the family dynamics were so skewed that even my 8-year-old brother expected regular presents while I got told I didn't deserve to be remembered. I excused myself quietly and went upstairs to my room. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. It wasn't just about the laptop, although that hurt. It was the casual cruelty, the way they'd taken something that belonged to me and given it away like I didn't exist. It was 18 years of being an afterthought, culminating in this moment where they couldn't even pretend to care about me on the one day that was supposed to be mine. That's when it hit me. I was done. I wasn't going to cry, wasn't going to beg for their attention, wasn't going to make a scene. I was just done being part of a family that saw me as invisible. That night, while everyone was downstairs watching Emma's favorite movie as part of her Princeton celebration, I quietly packed my bags. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, important documents, my small savings account information, and my acceptance letter to State University. I'd been working at the bookstore for 2 years, and between that and careful budgeting of my graduation gifts and small inheritance from my grandmother, I'd saved up enough money for a security deposit and the first few months of rent. It wasn't enough for a full ride through college, but it was enough to get started with my scholarship covering most of the tuition. I'd figure out the rest as I went. Mrs. Chen, my boss at the bookstore, had mentioned several times that her daughter had moved out and she was looking for a reliable tenant for her garage apartment. It wasn't much, but it was furnished and affordable, and Mrs. Chen had always been kind to me. I called her that afternoon and asked if the offer was still open. She said yes immediately and told me I could move in whenever I was ready. I wrote a note, not explaining myself because what was the point, just letting them know I was leaving and that they shouldn't worry about me. I left it on my pillow and walked out of the house at 2 a.m. with 2 suitcases and my guitar case. Mrs. Chen was waiting for me with hot chocolate and the keys to my new place. She didn't ask questions, just helped me get settled and told me to call if I needed anything. The garage apartment was small but perfect. 1 room with a kitchenette, a tiny bathroom, and a loft area where I could sleep. It had a separate entrance and felt like my own little sanctuary. For the first time in years, I was somewhere I felt genuinely wanted. The first few days after I left were quiet, almost too quiet. My family didn't even notice I was gone for 3 days. When they finally figured it out, I got exactly 1 text from Mom. "Where are you? You can't just disappear like this." I didn't respond. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. Over the next 18 months, I threw myself into work and school. Mrs. Chen gave me more hours at the bookstore, and I started tutoring kids in math and English on weekends. I was busier than I'd ever been, but I was also happier. Every dollar I earned was mine. Every decision I made was mine. Every accomplishment belonged to me alone. I enrolled in a few extra credit courses to get ahead on my degree requirements. I joined study groups, made new friends, and started dating a sweet guy named Michael from my economics class. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who valued my opinions and enjoyed my company. My family made a few half-hearted attempts to contact me in those first weeks. Dad called once to ask if I was done with this tantrum. Emma texted to ask if I could cover her car payment since she was temporarily short on cash. Jake sent me a message asking where I'd hidden his Pokemon cards. Not one of them asked how I was doing or if I needed anything. I ignored them all. About a month after I left, I made a decision that would change everything. I started a blog. It wasn't supposed to be anything big, just a place to document my journey of starting over. I called it Invisible No More, and wrote about my experiences as the forgotten middle child, my decision to leave, and my process of building an independent life. I wrote about the challenges of navigating college financial aid without parental support. I shared tips for other young people who were considering going out on their own. I posted about my small victories, making Dean's List, getting promoted to manager at the bookstore, finding genuine friendships. Somehow, the blog started gaining traction. Other people who felt invisible in their families began sharing their stories in the comments. My posts were getting shared on social media. Within 18 months, I had thousands of followers. That's when the media attention started. A local newspaper picked up my story first, then a regional magazine, then a national parenting blog reached out asking for an interview about family dynamics and the impact of favoritism on children. I was hesitant at first. I'd never intended for this to become a public thing, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that staying quiet hadn't protected me before. Maybe speaking up could help other people in similar situations. The parenting blog interview went viral. Suddenly, I was getting interview requests from major publications. A podcast reached out. A literary agent contacted me about turning my story into a book. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries with my family. They started reaching out more frequently as my public profile grew, but their messages remained self-centered. Mom wanted to know if I was embarrassing the family with my stories. Dad demanded I stop airing dirty laundry in public. Emma was furious that people online were calling her spoiled and entitled. I ignored them all. The book deal came through nearly 2 years after I'd left home. It wasn't huge money, but it was enough to help secure my financial stability through college. I was going to be a published author before my 19th birthday. As my public platform grew, I used it responsibly. I partnered with organizations that supported young people aging out of foster care and those experiencing family rejection. I started a scholarship fund for students from dysfunctional families who were pursuing education independently. My life was fuller and more meaningful than it had ever been when I was trying to earn my family's approval. The success wasn't just professional either. I was finally learning what healthy relationships looked like. Michael and I had been dating for 4 months, and he treated me with a respect and consideration I'd never experienced before. When I told him about my family situation, he didn't try to fix it or tell me I should forgive them. He just listened, validated my feelings, and supported my choices. "You know what I love about you?" he said one evening as we were studying together in the campus library. "You never apologize for taking up space. You just exist confidently. It's refreshing." I almost laughed. If only he'd known the girl I used to be. Constantly shrinking herself, apologizing for having opinions, grateful for scraps of attention. But that girl was gone, and I was glad for it. My friend circle was expanding too. There was Jessica, my study partner in advanced marketing, who came from a similar family dynamic and understood the freedom that came with cutting toxic ties. There was David, a guy in my literature class who'd grown up in foster care and had built his entire life from scratch at 17. And there was Maria, my coworker at the bookstore who'd become like an older sister to me, always checking in and offering advice without judgment. These people saw me for who I actually was, not who they needed me to be or who they expected me to be. They celebrated my successes without jealousy, supported me through challenges without conditions, and never once made me feel like I was asking for too much by simply existing. Mrs. Chen had become something of a surrogate grandmother to me. She'd leave little care packages outside my door, homemade soup when I was sick, fresh flowers from her garden, books she thought I'd enjoy. One evening, she knocked on my door with tea and cookies. "You know," she said as we sat in my tiny living room, "I raised 4 children. I know what it looks like when a child is loved and when a child is neglected." I looked up from my tea, surprised by her directness. "You have a good heart," she continued in her slightly accented English, "but you also have a hurt heart. I see it sometimes in your eyes, like you're still surprised when people are kind to you." She was right, and it hit me harder than I expected. Even months after leaving my family, I still found myself amazed when people showed genuine interest in my life, when they remembered things I told them, when they included me in plans without me having to hint or ask. "It gets easier," Mrs. Chen said gently, "learning to expect kindness, learning to know you deserve it, but it takes time." Around the same time, something interesting started happening with my blog. I began getting messages from parents who'd read my story and were taking a hard look at their own family dynamics. Some were horrified to recognize themselves in my descriptions and were asking for advice on how to repair relationships with their overlooked children. One message particularly stuck with me. It was from a mother in Ohio named Patricia. "Sarah," she wrote, "I read your blog and I see my own family in your words. I have 3 kids, and I realized I've been giving all my attention to my oldest son's sports achievements and my youngest daughter's academic success, while my middle child just exists. She's a good kid, responsible and kind, but I realize I've been taking that for granted while celebrating the others. She's only 14, so maybe it's not too late. What would you want your parents to have done differently?" I spent hours crafting my response, thinking about what might have changed my trajectory if my parents had recognized the problem earlier. I wrote about the importance of individual attention, of celebrating different types of achievements, of making sure each child feels seen and valued for who they are rather than what they accomplish. The message exchange with Patricia continued for weeks, and eventually she sent me updates about how things were improving with her daughter. It felt incredible to know that my painful experience might prevent another child from going through the same thing, but it also made me think more about my own family and what was broken beyond repair versus what might have been fixable if they'd been willing to try. The book writing process had forced me to examine every aspect of my childhood with brutal honesty. Working with my editor, a brilliant woman named Rebecca, who specialized in memoirs, I dug deeper into patterns I'd previously accepted as normal. "Tell me about a typical family dinner when you were younger," Rebecca had asked during one of our sessions. As I described the dynamics, Emma dominating conversation with stories about her social life, Jake interrupting constantly while parents indulged him with laughter, and me eating silently unless directly asked the question, I realized how abnormal it actually was. "Did anyone ever ask about your day?" Rebecca pressed. I thought hard about it. Sometimes Mom would ask how school was, but it was always while she was doing something else, cooking, checking her phone, helping Jake with homework. If I started to answer with anything more than fine, she'd get this glazed look like she was waiting for me to finish. "And your father?" she asked. Dad was either at work or watching TV. He'd ruffle my hair sometimes when he passed by my room, and he always said, "Good job," when I showed him my report cards. But we never really talked. Writing it all down, examining it with Rebecca's help, had been both therapeutic and devastating. I'd started to understand that the neglect wasn't just about big moments like birthdays. It was woven into every day, every interaction, every family memory. By the time winter arrived, I was settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and fulfilling. My college grades were excellent. My relationship was healthy and supportive. My work was meaningful, and my living situation was stable and comfortable. I had built a life that was entirely my own. The most unexpected development, though, was how my relationship with myself had evolved. The girl who had once apologized for taking up space, who had shrunk herself to avoid conflict, who had accepted crumbs of attention as sufficient, she was completely gone. In her place stood someone who knew her worth, who set boundaries without guilt, who asked for what she needed without shame. It wasn't just confidence I had gained, it was a fundamental shift in how I moved through the world. I no longer scanned rooms for approval, no longer measured my value by other people's reactions, no longer accepted treatment that felt wrong just to keep the peace. But I knew the real test was coming. Emma's birthday was approaching exactly 6 months after mine. The same Emma who had smirked while accepting my gift and declaring herself the only one who mattered in the family. I had a decision to make. For almost 2 years, I'd built a life without them. I was successful, happy, and surrounded by people who valued me. I could have kept ignoring them forever. But there was something poetic about the timing of Emma's birthday, and I realized I had an opportunity to show them exactly what they'd thrown away. The day of Emma's birthday the following year, I knew they'd all be gathered together for another of their elaborate celebrations. I could picture it perfectly, the decorations, the expensive gifts, the social media posts about their perfect family. I waited until evening when I knew they'd be in full celebration mode. Then I sent a single message to the family group chat I'd been ignoring for nearly 2 years. Happy birthday, Emma. I hope you enjoy the celebration. I wanted to let you all know that my book comes out next month. The local news wants me for an interview next week, and I've been featured in several regional publications about young entrepreneurs. I've also been offered an academic scholarship to continue my degree while working on my second book. I wanted to thank you all because none of this would have been possible if you hadn't shown me so clearly that I needed to build my own life. Sometimes the best gift is realizing you don't need gifts from people who don't value you. Take care. I hit send and turned off my phone. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't need one. The message wasn't really for them, it was for me. A final closing of a chapter that had been weighing on me for too long.